Everyone, welcome back to Yield Today with Down Candland. I'm joined by the one and only Thomas Ciampa. Did I say that right?
Close. Ciampa.
Ciampa, dude, that's actually way cooler. Way cooler. Way
Yeah,
to go.
I get that all the time though. Either Ciampa or Campa. Rarely do they get it on the first try.
Yeah, I could have asked about that, but that's super cool. At least we got that. So Thomas is a really special guy because he's done a lot of different work on businesses, side hustles, and different things. And nowadays, he's just sharing his story as much as he possibly can. So, Thomas, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I am 23 years old. I'm based out of Milwaukee. I actually just finished up my undergrad, which it took me a good 5 years to get the 4-year degree, but we made it. I studied supply chain as my background. I work in logistics today. And yeah, I'm a big fan of the side hustles. I think one, just to even build skill sets, I think is huge because you learn stuff about yourself, but also business and other things that you probably wouldn't in a college setting or even a corporate setting. And yeah, I'm a big sports fan. I was actually born out in Colorado, so I'm a huge Rockies fan. And I'll argue that to the day that I die. But yeah, I'm just kind of ordinary. Honestly, I wouldn't call myself a super success. I'm not balling on a budget in any means, but I think I think I've had a pretty cool personal development journey. I've started off from some kind of lows and kind of climbed my way out and got to a spot where I'm really excited about the next 5 to 10 years, to be completely honest. So nothing special, just here to have fun and share my story and be able to impact as much as I can. So
Yeah, that's awesome. There's a lot that I got out of your story just from the little bits and pieces that I picked up of it from your profile and the other things that you've done. How was like your family situation going up? You don't have to like go too much into it, but like how did that kind of help you with, growing up and getting that message and that story you have today?
yeah, totally. It's interesting because I think I grew up a lot quicker than most people, either by choice or by not. So I grew up in a small town, and I lost my mom pretty early to cancer. I was 14 years old,
Oh, wow.
but also had a struggling family life before that. She dealt with alcoholism, and so I saw that kind of growing up and divorces and things like that. And so for me, it's interesting because I look at that point in my life at 14, just going into high school. So at that point, your body's changing. You're trying to figure out social groups and who you're going to be and whatever. And I think I had like a path that I could take. Normally, if something bad happens in your life, you either are like, holy crap, you realize how precious life is and you do some really good from it. Or you pick the opposite route where it's like, I'm going to have fun while I'm here and kind of not have any cares. And I picked the latter. I picked the one where it was, hey, let's have fun while we're alive and let's not have too many cares and let's just like go and have fun. And so for me at that point, I kind of went down a little bit of a bad road. I was still in athletics. I'm a huge athlete. I played basketball and baseball at the varsity level, but we partied hard as well. We play hard, but we party hard. And I got into a bad way with drinking a ton. I mean, I started drinking at 14 at that point, and by the time I was a senior in high school, we were probably drinking 3 nights a week, maybe 4, depending on if we won a game or not. And then got into the drug scene as well, and kind of went down that path. Um, and it's funny because there was points where I was doing really poorly with just like my mental health and just going through that kind of stage. But then I also, like I said, I grew up really quick. So I had a little bit more maturity. Stuff didn't affect me as much. Like the little things of like people didn't like me because of XYZ. It wasn't like, holy crap, I feel like distant from society. It was like, no, I can get over that a little bit quicker. Um, and I just kind of put more on my shoulders and knew that what I was going to do in my life was my responsibility. And it was whatever I did wrong was like I took ownership over that.
That's good. Yeah, that's amazing that you're able to get this sense of ownership early on in your life and see how precious life is. I feel like there's so many youth and people of today, they don't get to really notice that until later on. Maybe their life is in danger or something like that. And, it just kind of changes your perspective a little bit. So you got to have your good season of fun time and learning and growth and stuff. That's awesome. You played basketball. I was the basketball manager for 3 years in my high school, went to every game,
Okay.
every practice, and I was the ball
Yeah.
boy, water boy, towel boy, everything. And so that's pretty awesome. You're able to do that. But what was I guess the point where it kind of started crashing down a little bit, or when it was kind of getting old, or, bring us back to that moment.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because I got out of high school, and I think a lot of either athletes or just somebody who ties their identity to what they do kind of goes through a point where you realize, okay, I'm not like the good athlete, where people know that I do not so great things, but they see me as this kid who's still performing really well, right? So it was kind of swept under the rug. And then there was a point where I graduated high school. I'm not playing sports anymore, and I'm still doing the party stage. And so at that point, I got into a little bit of legal trouble. I had messed up a little bit, and just had a point where I sat back and I was like, wow, I'm really going down like a really dark path. Like at first it wasn't that bad. It was like, oh, I'm an athlete, and yeah, we party, but like I'm an athlete first. And I lost that sense of identity from athletics because I wasn't playing anymore. And I was just tied to doing poorly in school. I did really bad my first semester. And then I was probably in the worst mental state. I was drinking, I was partying, and I was having fun. But once you wake up after that, you have a lot of regret. And so at that point in my life, I just kind of sat down and really looked at where I was going. Like, what is the future that Tommy Ciampa is going to have? And at that point, it was I remember talking with my sister. It's like, I look like I'll either end up in a situation my mom was in, where I'm addicted to something, or I'll probably go down and drop out of college and not do anything great from that, which a lot of people do when they drop out, but probably go down the wrong path and end up. My uncle was in and out of jail for a while, and I got compared to him a lot when I was younger.
That's no
So I
fun.
think that was kind of the spot where it just hit me, where I didn't have athletics anymore. I didn't have that identity. And so I literally was only the not so great kid, is kind of how I looked at it.
Gotcha. And do you prefer if I call you Tommy?
Anything. I'm cool with Tom, Thomas, Tommy. I'm cool with anything.
Okay, we'll just stick with Thomas for now. Still. That's crazy though, dude, because you had this attachment to these different activities and they were part of you. Then they were kind of stripped away, taken away. I think it's crazy. Like when you're out of high school, you're like, wait, I can't play in high school anymore because I've graduated. You can't really go back to those moments. You come back and visit, and I've done that with my high school and it's fun, but you can't go back to any of those practices and practice any harder than you already did. You can't get more sleep. You can't be kinder to the coaches. All those days are gone, you know? So you kind of had this very humbling, realization. And what did you do from there? How did you take action? That first semester sounds like was when things started kind of crumbling a little bit. What'd you do then?
Yeah. So I'll admit it took me about a year to really, from like the point of realization, a year to really like figure out even what to do. So I finished my first year. I technically was kicked out of the school, but I like to say that I dropped out of it, so that it doesn't hurt my ego so much sometimes. No. But yeah, it took me about a year before I really even started doing anything. I kind of just sat in this stage of like, I don't know what to do and I don't know where to go. But when that point happened, I was currently out of school. I took a semester off, and I worked at my uncle's restaurant. At that point, I didn't have a license, so I was walking to work every morning and walking back every night. And so at that point, it was like, okay, I really need to start taking action. So the biggest thing for me right away was just having good and open conversations with like family members of like, I know I talked to my sister of, hey, I really want to just start doing stuff. Like I want to start, it didn't even have to be like side hustles, but it was like, I just want to start like progressing towards something because I missed that. I had that in sports. Like, how can I get to 10 points a game? How can I hit a 300? average. And so for me, I started diving into books. Podcasts were huge. I listened to Tom Bilyeu on his impact theory.
Mm-hmm.
And it really just started opening my eyes to like the whole journey of personal development, because I never saw that before. And I started working on small things. I started trying to do like design work, or I just kind of dove into I looked at like marketing stuff. But I think the biggest thing for me was just having those conversations like, hey, I need a little bit of grace because I might not be in the spot that everyone expected me to be in. But I'm going to work towards getting out of where I'm at right now into a better spot. And then just taking action. I think a lot of times, especially for that year, I just sat back. I don't know what to do. I'm not prepared to start doing something. In reality, I probably could have started taking action to read books, listen to podcasts, and have fun digging into different things right away. It's kind of the two biggest things that started to kind of pull me out of where I was, especially mentally.
That's good. Yeah, you're able to change your environment, both like what you were seeing, what you're doing, what you're hearing. That's awesome. I just want to know, just for the fun fact board, how far of a walk was it to get to work?
Not that far. It was,
Okay.
I say that and it sounds really cool for story wise, but no, I mean, it was probably like a 10-minute walk.
I mean, that still requires some discipline. You can't leave 5 minutes before.
Yeah. The only thing that made it actually tough was it was in winter, like right as winter started is when I started the job. And in Wisconsin, our winters are not so forgiving. So it was a decent amount of walk, but yeah, I mean, I just pretty much ran there and ran back and I was good.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah. Just self-development taught you and helped you move forward in a lot of these different things, make these little adjustments. What would you say like was one of the first big habits or first big, I guess, things that you did to take that massive action?
Yeah, I think like the biggest habit that I started to pick up was honestly reading. Uh, there's a lot that you can learn in books that I don't think you can learn elsewhere. And there's a saying that I found right before I kind of got into that habit was there is no difference between somebody who can't read and somebody who chooses not to. And there's a lot of people who feel bad for those who can't read, but they realize that they can and they still choose not to. And that was the biggest thing because it allowed me to kind of escape where I was at that moment. I mean, I still wasn't in a great spot, but it allowed me to kind of get out of my own head and it's like, and start picking up ideas. I know for me, one of the biggest books or most impactful was Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Nice.
And it just like really opened my eyes to like, okay, why do I do certain things? And then like The Compound Effect, I think that's by Darren Hardy, was like one of the next ones I read. And it just showed me how much my previous actions were compounding over time to get me to where I am. So that now I realize what I do from here to maybe a year, 2, 3 years later, can compound to a better situation, a better lifestyle, a better mental space is kind of how I looked at it. So I think reading was huge. Getting up early too. I think if you're struggling mentally or if you're struggling just in your situation, wake up, read, have fun, turn on some awesome music and have a dance party maybe. I don't know, but get your day going a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's super easy to wake up and just stay in that rest mindset. Like, I'm going to just go and sit on the couch and I will not fall asleep. Guess that's probably going to happen. You're probably going to fall asleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have that planned out.
Yeah, you wake up, you instead of laying on your bed, you lay on the couch and you pull the same blanket over you and you watch the same show you were watching last night. It pretty much is the same thing, just a different spot.
Yeah, it's like I think is it Newton's theory of relativity, like how an object at rest tends to remain at rest, an object in motion tends to remain in motion. That's something I've definitely seen lately is like waking up early and just doing a small thing like writing or something. It can really change the trajectory of your entire day.
It really does. Yeah, how you start your day is probably going to be how you finish it. Is kind of how I always think. So if I start strong, if I write, if I read, if I go work out right away, like I know the way that I think of it is I just want to compound wins. There's a guy, Charlie Rocket. I don't know if you've ever seen him, but he talks about like his winning streak. And he's a little bit out there for me personally. But I like the idea of like he just continues to win day after day or even hour after hour. So it's like, how can you wake up and you win right away? You, instead of falling back asleep, you read that book. So what's next after that? Maybe it's showering or making your food or prepping or whatever. But just continually trying to win throughout the day is kind of how I think of it.
Yeah, I mean, going back to basketball real fast, like you do all these dribbling drills, you do all this running, you do all this, passing drills and all these different plays and everything, and it gets you in that mindset, so you're able to perform well in games, and you have these little wins. So then it's more likely you'll actually do some good stuff. And the same thing can be true for our day. I recently finished, or I almost finished this book called How Champions Think in
Yeah.
Business and in Life. And I think I was like maybe 30 minutes away from finishing it, but basically talked about how a really good way to just have a really great day is to focus just on the process and doing the process as best as you possibly can, and not just chasing the results. Like, I'm going to finish this homework. Like, a better way would be probably to be like, hey, I'm going to get out all my work and I'm going to stay focused and do this for this period of time, because that's a win.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think one thing that I look at, even in my life journey, right, is like it's more about the journey. Like with homework, if it was just about the end result, which technically it kind of is, and one reason I don't 100% agree with just like the education system, but that's a long story. But it's like it's not about the end result, it's about what you learn through the process. So if I learn more but I failed, I think that's better than not learning and getting it right in my head. Because I can always, if I learn throughout the process, I can always reevaluate, make adjustments, and then succeed later on. But if I never learned, the next time I'm just going to do the same thing where I either cheated or I don't do it because I don't know what to do. Is kind of how I think of it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely something I do and have shared a lot in my social media journey and whatnot, is sharing those little struggles and how you bounce back from them. So take us back to some moment where you kind of dropped the ball or made a mistake, and what did you do to bounce back and learn from that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there was multiple. I think like I definitely, especially over that course of like probably the first like 6 months, 7 months, that I wasn't like doing what I used to do, right? Wasn't in that world anymore. I would not say it's perfect. And I don't think anybody ever has like a perfect switch in life, whether it's you're switching career paths or you're switching how you live. So I definitely dropped the ball. I mean, there was times where I would lay in bed and I mean, I'd have like a beer or two and I'd be like, I could easily just go back to what I was doing. It's comfortable. I know what to expect. And I dropped the ball a ton. I mean, there was so many times where I like wouldn't go to work because I either drank too much or I just didn't want to face reality. I think that was my biggest thing throughout like the first 6 or 7 months of just trying to figure myself out and change my trajectory is I didn't want to face where I actually was at the moment. So I wouldn't do stuff. I wouldn't clean. I wouldn't, and it wasn't like a huge ball drop, but it was just this constant, almost like snowball effect. Like I wouldn't go to work. So then I'd have to explain to my uncle why I didn't go to work, which meant that he wouldn't be happy, which means I probably wouldn't go to work the next day because I don't want to face that guy. He was big, he's scary, he's Italian, he's got tattoos. Like,
Oof.
no way, dude.
The big three, dude. You don't want any of that.
Yeah.
Tattoos, Italian, and big.
Yeah, it was like, man, I don't want to face that at all. And so I don't know if I'd had like a massive ball drop. It was just like at one point, I remember I sat back again. It was probably 2, 3 months in, and I was just like, I don't think I've made any progress.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally in the same spot. Maybe I've done a little bit, but I also like went back a ton. And that's one thing I think about is like, I don't know what theory it is or what it's called, but it's like nothing stays stagnant. Like you're either growing or you're regressing. And that's one thing I keep in mind a ton. But I think that's the biggest ball drop I had was I didn't want to face reality for a while. I just kind of sat there and was like, nah, I'm cool. Like, yeah, I'm kind of making progress. And I would just make up lies in my head of you're doing better than you used to do, but were you really? Probably not.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really tough when that self-talk comes into the game and it's like, haha, I told you you weren't gonna do it and you're
Yeah.
not gonna amount to anything or anything like that. It really can be very hurtful. But I thought about when you're talking about dropping the ball, like what position did you play in basketball?
I was a point guard.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But, there'll be times like you lose the ball, you get stripped, it gets taken away, but you can always run back on defense. You can take it back. And so you can own it. You can take it back. The game's not over. There's 4 quarters, 8 minutes a quarter. You have plenty of time. You have teammates, different things. So tell me about one of the teammates that kind of came into your life when you were doing the self-development journey, I guess,
Yeah.
focusing on that.
Yeah, I think so. That was post high school when I really started to dive into that. So I actually wasn't really playing sports at the time. I mean, I was playing baseball every now and then, so I don't think I had a teammate then. One guy that I can really think back to who, even in my not like so great days, even though it was fun or whatever, but one guy that really just always had my back was this guy JT, and he played football at Whitewater. I think he just finished up, and I don't talk to him as much now. But he was a guy that really took me and like made me family, and I think that's one reason why uh, I stayed in the scene that I was in for so long, is because even though it was bad and it wasn't good for my health or my trajectory, I made some really good friends. Like we were like blood brothers is how I think of it. And to this day, do I see him as much? Do I talk to him? Probably not. But do I love them? Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were there in some of my darkest times. And so for him, I just remember I remember I'd sit there and cry and just tell him like, crap, like this stuff sucks right now. And he'd be like, dude, it's okay. Like we all go through different things. And he played baseball with me. He played basketball with me. He was our star player at pretty much every sport, a heck of an athlete. And I love him for the fact that he really just like helped me out in some really tough times. And he was there for me and we had fun together. And it was like a brother. And so I think that's one big thing that I've learned is association is huge. It's one reason why I got out of the town that I was in, is because as much as I loved everybody, the scene wasn't great. And that's one reason I'm thankful for Milwaukee, is I've met some really great people who have done some amazing things in life that have been able to help me and kind of guide me through this whole new kind of path that I started off on.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've been reading the book Atomic Habits, rereading it
Yeah.
by James Clear. And he talked about like how there's these different soldiers that were like addicted to heroin or something like that. But then when they got home, they were able to get off of it because they weren't in that environment and it wasn't around them all the time. So they're able to get off of it. So that's awesome. You're able to take yourself out of that situation completely, take yourself out of the picture and put yourself in a new one. That takes a lot of faith, man.
Yeah, I think that's one reason why a lot of people won't do it. I think is it does take that faith, and you get made fun of. You get people ask you, why haven't you come home? Stuff like that. And you just got to really realize what your priorities are. If your priority to get out of a certain situation is higher than being in that situation, then I suggest that you kind of withstand it. And one thing that I thought about actually today was like, we all have to overcome things, right? So maybe it's overcoming and getting out of an environment. And maybe my environment looks really hard to somebody who has like a life that's really set up for them. Maybe like, holy crap, this kid had to deal with a parent getting, or a parent being lost, and like this whole situation. I could never do that. But then I look at people, especially in inner Milwaukee, and it's like, dude, I could never get out of that, I don't think. And so it's all perspective. And I think the cool thing about when somebody actually gets out of that situation and in the environment that they're in, it proves to the other people or to anybody else that is in a lesser situation or even the same, that you could do it. Like you could actually get out. So that's one thing I'm really proud of, is that I actually like kind of grew up a little bit and had the guts to like
Mm-hmm.
not fall back into the same routine and can show that it can be done. Which I've had people reach out to me from my old hometown and be like, dude, it's sad that I don't see you anymore, but it's really inspiring that you actually got out and like you're not around and that you're doing different things.
Yeah, that's beautiful, dude. That's awesome.
Appreciate it. Uh,
Yeah, you made me think of Spider-Man. So Spider-Man, I read this like article or something like that. I was doing this superhero paper for my intro to entrepreneurship class. Thing with Spider-Man was he kind of didn't really want to be that superhero guy. And then
yeah.
it was like his uncle or somebody like that got killed. And if he had been ready, if he had been close by, he could have prevented it from happening. And that was kind of like,
Yeah.
oh shoot, I am going to do this. I'm going to do this. So it sounds like you've really put on that superhero cape and have just moved on and grown from it and been better for it. So just way to go, getting those superpowers in check.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call myself a superhero in any sense, but I appreciate it. I'm not that good yet.
That's okay. That's okay. You know,
We'll
you'll
get there.
you'll get there.
Yeah.
I would say you're definitely a superhero for some people.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that's kind of like another thing is like people might look up to like the greats, right? Like we were talking like The Rock. Like, hey, dude, everyone can look up to him. But the one thing that I think of is like you can be an example for anybody. So like for me, I just graduated college. I'm not a millionaire. I'm living in a 2-bedroom apartment with my sister. Like that situation is not ideal. Maybe it is for some people, but not for me. But it's like if you really want to be an example, you can. You just have to make the choice. And like you said, you can be a hero for somebody who needs it a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're my hero, like in some way, because I'm a junior in college and it's finally starting to get really difficult. And it's
Yeah.
like kind of slipping a little bit, trying to like climb up this really high road. But it's
Yeah.
okay. Now it's actually really difficult and there's still some distance. So yeah, definitely learning
Those
some.
econ courses will get you, man. Those are the tough ones. But
Yeah. Yeah. So how have you been able to turn like everything that you've learned, everything that we've talked about so far into your business life and into choosing supply chain and just, I guess, going into some of the why behind those things?
yeah, great question. So supply chain was just a pick because my dad has a career in it. I actually started off engineering. So I was at a private engineering school, which made failing that a little bit more expensive than if it was just like a public school. So that was a great lesson. But yeah, so I started off engineering, took a semester off, and then switched to business. Always thought I would do business, but I went engineering because I was good at math, or so I was told. And that was a great way to make money, is be an engineer, right? And so I switched to supply chain. I didn't really have like a super interest in it, but I saw my dad, he worked in it. I was able to build relationships with people he's worked with. And I had some great insight that way, right? Like I saw what my career path could be. And then the reason why I kind of like am a big fan of side hustles or at least just doing something and uh, just working on something else is because for me, like as great as the corporate career looked, I didn't really get to see my dad that often. He worked in Philadelphia for multiple years while we were in Wisconsin. And so we had to, I mean, the flights were cool because the flight attendants knew us and they were like, hey, that's Dan Ciampa's kids, right? We got to stay in the hotel and play in the game room because he lived at the hotel. We got to play in the game room because they knew us. But what I saw really was somebody who wasn't around all the time. And then from there, he went to Minnesota. And so that's not super far, right? But it's a whole nother state. And so I saw my dad on weekends for probably 3, 4, 5 years in a time where I kind of actually needed him to be there. And so that was one reason why I've kind of started. I mean, I've worked on a few side hustles. That's kind of the plan that I want to go so that I can eventually get out of that corporate arena. Because for me, I think I'm a big family man and I want to be able to instill those values in my kids and be able to be around because I don't know if I had that as much. So I think that's a huge driving force as into why I want to kind of go my own path. Maybe I won't be balling on a budget and be a millionaire and all of those things, but if I can kind of have a little bit more of my time, I think that's the biggest thing that I'm really driving for.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. It's all about, not so much the time you spend with people, but it's the time, that's quality, like the time that is with them. And it might, I've found how powerful just like impromptu little meetings, or like just running into somebody, or just playing chess, or these little like things, they can really help glue the relationship together and not feel so forced and stuff when you're able to just take a couple minutes out and spend some time with them. Yeah. So that's a fantastic why, man. Just, being able to be there for your kids and your future kids, and help
Yeah,
them out with,
future. Future kids don't have any yet, but
uh-huh. Yeah, being able to be there for them and be present, so you can take their phone calls and whatever needs to be done. Yeah, I think that's really awesome.
yeah, I appreciate it. I know for me, like even what you were just saying, like the small things, and that's what, honestly, yeah, I remember the big trips, right? I remember going to Disney World and going to Texas with like my dad, or even being out in Philly with my dad. I remember those things. But what I really remember is the days that we were on like the ball diamond and he was pitching to me and I was trying to hit home runs. And it was just me, my sister, and him. And then afterwards, we would go to Frosty Freeze in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. We'd pick up some ice cream and we'd listen to music on the way home. And those are like the memories that I really, really cherish. And I think what I missed is when he was gone, I didn't have that as much. I didn't have those cool little memories. And he was doing what he had to, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he was a single dad. I was living with my grandma. And so he was providing for us. So I thank him for that and I love him for that. But yeah, for me, I mean, one of my biggest beliefs is my dad did what he could to have so that I would have a great life. But I don't want to just stop where my dad went. I want to be able to stand on his shoulders and go farther than he ever did. And I think that's the best way that I can honor him, is show him, hey, I used the resources and the life that you gave me, not to just settle and do the same thing for my kids, but to be able to set them up for a better life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really vibe with that ice cream store. I remember my dad took me out to get some ice cream at this place called Jimmy Cone in Maryland. This really small chocolate like ice cream place, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
some magical memories for sure. Just always brings back good vibes. So
Yeah, it's the small things, man. Especially ice cream, dude, because ice cream's always a great memory. But
yeah, and just like when they're with you and you just know that you're like their priority, you're like the only thing on their mind too. There's you really can't put a price on that.
yeah, it's again, and it's those conversations that you have, right? Just like fun conversations. Maybe it's something silly, but maybe it's meaningful, right? Like I remember being in the car with my dad and we'd have meaningful conversations about just how we're feeling. Like, and I'm not good at opening up at all. So that's one thing I'm working on still. But I remember like after my mom died, it was just like we'd have those conversations, and mostly it was one sided because I never wanted to share. But it was just small things. Yeah, we'd go hit a bucket of balls, and then we'd go play catch, and then we'd have a good conversation. And that's what I really want to be able to do with my life is have meaningful conversations with people who mean a lot to me. I think that's honestly like one of the biggest things in life, is to be able to have good conversations. Like with my grandma, she raised me from freshman year in high school to senior year. So I absolutely love her. I adore her. She is my world. And obviously time is catching up, right? And she won't be here forever. So like for me, it's not what's the greatest thing I can do with my grandma and take her on a trip. It's like, no, can I sit down, play cards, and just have a really great conversation about life, about what she's thinking, how she's feeling. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we all can have in life, is just meaningful conversations.
Yeah, there's definitely a enormous need for that. I've
Yeah.
recently had some like people pass from all these different things, and it really puts everything into perspective. So way to go. Those conversations, they definitely are. You can learn so much from them, and everybody's like a book. Like
Yeah,
you get to
totally.
learn, you get to grow, you get to build from them, all their different chapters, all their different like struggles and things. But then when they pass on, what is of their life is kind of limited to whatever they did or memories other people have with them and everything. So yeah,
Yeah.
having a really good idea of who they were is just amazing. And for me, like with meeting really great people, like such as yourself, you can really dig like so far and never reach the bottom. you can always spend
Yeah.
more time, you can always learn more, and there's so much value in that.
And that's the cool part, because those conversations never dry out. I never sit there with my grandma and it's like, crap, what do I talk about? It's like, no, what was life back in like 1940? Like, tell me about those days, right? And like you were talking about, like just never forgetting somebody. Like there's that cliche saying, like you die twice, once when you actually die, and the second time when it's the last time that somebody mentions your name.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I think those stories and those conversations, like I will tell my great grandkids when I eventually hopefully can see them, about Grandma Rachel and her squeaky chair and her yelling at me because I'm throwing a party in the basement during high school. Like I'll tell them those stories because it just meant so much to me that she was there. And that, yeah, I'll just always remember those. And so she's made an impact that will last farther than she does.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It makes me think of the movie Coco. Did you see that?
No, no, I
Oh,
didn't.
you should add that to your list. You should add that to your list because what you were just talking about, it goes along right along with that movie.
I'll have to check it out. Maybe I'll do that tonight. I got some free time.
Sounds good. Well, I think that's pretty much everything. Is there anything else you'd like to share for the youth who might be struggling with finding themselves or thinking they're just not good enough for life or just really overwhelmed with how things currently are?
Yeah, I think, well, overwhelmed is kind of our thing this year, right? There's a lot going on in the world, and a lot of people are in worse situations I am. But for me, it's just, I think the biggest thing that I live by is progress, not perfection. It's like my hashtag and everything, and I really rep that because I think it's so true. It doesn't matter where you're starting as long as you're making progress, and it's progress, not perfection, because you'll never be perfect. You'll never do perfect. And if you wait to the point where it's going to be perfect, you'll never actually start. So my biggest thing for everybody who's either struggling or even doing well and wants to do something else is just act first when you're not prepared, and you can always reevaluate, readjust, maybe stop, but take action, and be happy. I mean, this year is a struggle for a lot of people, and I feel for them, but just have fun, be happy, enjoy it with people you love, and take action.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely here to learn and definitely not to be those professionals and all those different things, you know.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for appearing on the show, Thomas. Definitely gleaned a lot from this conversation. How can the listeners get in touch with you and learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm probably biggest or most on LinkedIn. So it's Thomas Ciampa, and the last name is spelled Ciampa. And then I'm also a little bit on Twitter, which is Ciampa, my last name all lowercase, underscore Thomas, all lowercase. Feel free to reach out. I'm always down for conversations. I will argue why Wisconsin sports is probably better than any state, and I'm good at that. But yeah, I'm always down for conversations and meeting new people, and just having fun and building new relationships. So I appreciate you having me on too. This was freaking awesome. You do a really great job, and I honestly really enjoyed it. So I appreciate it.
Oh, well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. I'm trying to get better at it for sure. One step at a time, one imperfect step at a time, but it'll lead
Progress,
to
not
good stuff,
perfection.
lead to some
Yeah,
great stuff. So yeah, thanks, man, for coming on the show.
yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to keeping in touch and talking more.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Reach out. I'm always open, and like I said, I want to be able to help you out as much as I can and support you, because I really love what you're doing, and you really did. I mean, you crush it. Like, you do a really good job of asking like good questions, but also like engaging and being in the conversation, because I think that's really tough to do. Is like, how can I know what question I'm going to ask next, but also like comment on what they just said, and
Hmm.
add your own spice. So seriously, dude, I think you're crushing it. I think you need a lot more than 29, was it, on YouTube?
Yeah, subscribers on YouTube, but the
Yeah,
followers on Spotify is a little different in iTunes, but still, it's in those beginning
totally.
stages.
Keep crushing it, dude. Seriously, like you did really well, and um, I think you'll do great things with it. Honestly, like I think you'll be able to obviously grow a big following, which I think is sweet, but also like have a good impact as well and build some really
Hmm.
good relationships, like you've seen. And so, yeah, like I said, anything I can do to help out, totally down. Shoot me a message. And yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, dude.